Senator Thorpe.
Thank you, President. I rise to speak to the Prime Minister's Closing the Gap address in the other place. But before I do that, I'd like to acknowledge that we are all on stolen land. That's right, it's stolen land. There's been no treaty, it's still stolen, no agreements, it's still stolen. So I'd like to acknowledge all of those survivors of First People right across this country who've maintained resistance and who've survived the mass murders and complete destruction of country, who remain here today to share their country, culture, song, dance with us all. I'd like to also acknowledge the Black politicians in this colonisers' place. We know how hard it is to walk inside that building as First Nations people, as well as being a politician. So I acknowledge you all, and I acknowledge the difficulty it can be sometimes to walk in two worlds. The recently released Closing the Gap report includes data on the progress made on 7 out of the 18 targets set out in the Closing the Gap agreement. It is hard to call it progress when 3 of these targets, particularly the over-imprisonment rates of our people, child removals and suicide rates, are going up. This report is telling us that the government's strategy isn't working. Our people know that. We've always known that. Mr. Morrison isn't just failing in his leadership vacuum, things are getting worse. Over the last 8 years of Liberal government, most key indicators have gone backwards. What's more, the target to reduce First Nations imprisonment by at least 15% by 2031 in the Closing the Gap plan is completely inadequate. If we were to follow this trajectory, parity on imprisonment will not be achieved until 2093. We'll be dead. None of us here today will see this happen in our lifetime. The Morrison government can't even succeed in working towards this extremely inadequate target. What the Morrison government has done is put the bar on the floor, walked over it and called this progress. That's just how they operate. Smirks and mirrors. The Morrison government is pushing our people backwards. Every month, more and more of our people are dying in police and prison custody. Thousands of our people, our women in particular, are being warehoused in jails on remand. That's right. They haven't even been convicted of a crime but remain in prison. My heart goes out to every Black woman in prison right now. This Morrison government is taking our lives away, as our people are also at high risk of dying in police custody. There have been almost 500 First Nations deaths in custody since the Royal Commission into Aboriginal Deaths in Custody handed down its recommendations 30 years ago. 2 I'm related to. We're not immune, no one's immune. I want to stop and take a moment to honour their lives. Each and every one of them is loved and missed every day. So I'm going to request that the Senate please take a moment's silence for all the Aboriginal people who've died in custody. Thank you. It's devastating that our young ones don't get to live to the promise of their full potential because the suicide rates of our young mob is astronomical, and it's devastating. Under the Morrison government, more First Nations people are dying by suicide. Our people are more than twice as likely to die by suicide than others. What country do we live in where so many of our people don't see a future for themselves? To all mob, particularly young mob, watching this today, know that you are strong. Know that you are loved. And know that you come from a very, very, very long line of warriors and country defenders. Your ancestors and the stories of your connection to country culture, song, dance, runs through your veins. You are powerful and you are loved. And you are needed. You are needed by your mob, by your culture, and by your communities. And you are definitely needed to take seats up in this place. Look at it. Look at this place. There's the ancestors right there. They've just smashed a glass behind this screen because they are here with us too. It's shameful that the targets on life expectancy are failing and falling so short of the target. Our people are being killed by a system that tries to choke their potential from the moment they open their eyes. I cannot tell you how many funerals I attend each year. Our community hurts and it deserves better. We are strong and capable despite current injustices. We carry with us over 65,000 years of wisdom and leadership. Our boys, on average, have a life expectancy of 8.6 years less than non-First Nations boys, and our girls 7.8 years less. Come on. Come on. Do you have a conscience in there? So many of our boys won't live to the age of 67. That's when many of you fellas in there are starting to enjoy the pleasures of your retirement. Hope you feel good about that. Particularly those of you that are just there for your retirement and not there for the people anymore. We live in one of the richest countries in the world, but our boys in the Northern Territory and Western Australia have in fact a shorter life expectancy than boys in conflict-affected areas. How do you explain that to anybody? The report also showed that more First Nations babies are being stolen from their families. What you call out-of-home care is in fact too often the forceful removal of our children. The stolen generations are not over. They continue to happen right here, day by day. To this day, you take our children away from us to try and diminish our people and our culture. Finally, the Morrison government announced a compensation scheme to survivors of the stolen generations. The Stolen Generations Compensation Scheme announced is a very welcomed and much overdue move, but in practice falls way short of what we need. We Greens have done our research and genuine consultation, not the ticker box, pick a black fella ticker box consultation that both parties use, genuine consultation with members of the Stolen Gen and what compensation should look like. We have arrived at $200,000 per survivor as a starting point because no amount of money can compensate for the pain caused by a series of racist, harmful government actions. Does the Prime Minister really believe you can make good with $75,000 measly on ripping a child from their mother's arms, taken away from their family, community, from country and culture, from language, song and dance? The $75,000 offered to Stolen Gen members in the territories fall way short of what people need and comes way too late. The announcement doesn't include any provisions for the ongoing health needs of survivors, How much of the compensation money will have to be used to afford healthcare and access, in particular mental health services? We know First Nations people who have been ripped from their families suffer from increased transgenerational trauma. Too many of our people have passed into the dream time already and never seen any attempt of justice. For them, this sadly comes too late. The solutions, I have 1 more minute, to all of these problems that we did not create have been with us all along. When our people are in the driver's seat, we all prosper. We are hurt by the Morrison government imposing top-down policies and making decisions for us, thinking that they know best. This separates us from our culture and connection to country, things that are central to our health and well-being, making us sicker and die younger. Our people have been managing our own affairs for thousands of years. We must be in charge of our own destiny again. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit, we led the way in keeping our communities safe, but the Northern Territory government sent us body bags before they sent us PPE, assuming we would fail. When decisions are in our hands, our solutions work and we take care of our communities. First Nations culture is about caring for everyone. We modelled this in setting up First Nations legal services and community health service back in the late 60s. Imagine a better society where Aboriginal values and leadership are at the heart of decision making. We can only be our best and create a country where everyone can thrive when we listen and acknowledge the truth of our past and present. Together we can work to undo the damage that still causes First Nations people harm today. There is a beautiful tomorrow where we all can thrive and First Nations people make decisions about the future of our country. This government cannot deliver this. This is why they must be voted out. It was legal for Rio Tinto to destroy the Juukan Gorge site. This never would have happened if blackfellas had a say on their own country. Treaties provide a way to acknowledge past injustices, resolve differences and work out how to create a shared future. As a nation, we have an opportunity to create a 21st century treaty which we can all be a part of and celebrate together. Thank you.
Senator Mackenzie.
Thank you.